Hello and welcome once again. Today I am here with a detailed study of the poem Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Before we start, let's know Robert Frost a little closely. Robert Frost, whose full name was Robert Lee Frost, was born on 26th March 1874. He was an American poet. He was known for his realistic depictions of rural life. He frequently wrote about settings from rural life in New England, which helped him explore realistic and philosophical themes in his poems. You would be surprised to know that Frost is the only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. And he was also nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature 31 times. Robert Frost passed away on 29th January 1963 because of some injury after an operation. Now, let's have a reading of the poem Fire and Ice. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. When we go through the vocabulary of the poem, we see there are just 2 difficult words. One is perish and the other is suffice. Perish means die and suffice means sufficient. Now let's know the poem a little better. Fire and Ice is one of Robert Frost's most popular poems. It was published in December 1920 in Harper's Magazine and in 1923 in his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, New Hampshire. The poem is a work of eschatology. Now, what's eschatology? Eschatology is a theory that talks about the end of things or the end of world. So the poem is a work of eschatology. Now let me give you a quick fact about the poem. Mr. Harlow Shapley, who was a famous astronomer, had given an interview in the year 1960 in which he had said that he had a conversation with Robert Frost a year before the poem was published. This poem was published in 1920, so maybe they had a meeting in 1919 or 1918. So according to Mr. Shapley, during this conversation, Frost had asked him how the world would end. And Mr. Shapley had replied that either the sun would explode and incinerate the earth. Incinerate means destroy something by burning it. So either the sun would explode and incinerate or burn the earth, or the earth will somehow escape this fate only to end up slowly freezing in deep space. That means either the earth would burn, or if the sun explodes and the earth is saved, still the earth would not get any warmth and hence there would be no life on earth. Earth would be a dead planet. It would slowly freeze. So the earth would either end in fire or in ice. Shapley was surprised at seeing Fire and Ice published a year later, and he referred to it as an example of how science can influence the creation of art or clarify its meaning. Now, let's talk a little about the content of the poem. The poet expresses the profound idea that the world will end in either fire or ice. He uses the symbol of fire and ice to represent human desire and hatred respectively. According to him, uncontrolled human desire, the desire to possess wealth, property, even another human being has the power to destroy the world. Just as fire consumes everything in its path, passion consumes the human soul and burns it. Passionate desire for something can make a man kill another, make countries wage wars against each other, and has the power to destroy countries, races, even the whole civilization. Frost also says that if the world has to perish twice, or if there were a second option for the world to end, ice also has the power to destroy it. Here, by ice, the poet means to say hatred. Just as ice freezes everything, hatred in human heart freezes all emotions and feelings. Let's have a detailed explanation of the poem. Let's talk about line number 1 and line number 2. According to the lines, the words of which are, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. According to the lines, the poet says that some people of the world are of the opinion that the world may end in fire. Others say that the world would meet its doom because of ice. I had already told you in the beginning of this video that this poem is inspired by the conversation that Frost had with Mr. Shapley. The word some in the first and second line indicates the scientists, the astronomers, the learned people of the world who believe that the earth will end by burning when the sun explodes. Every star has a lifespan and it explodes at the end. The sun is also a star and an old one. Scientists believe it's going to explode in a few billion years. When it explodes, it will completely burn Mercury, Venus, and Earth because of the close proximity of these planets to the sun. Hence, they say that our world may end in fire. Again, there are some people, scientists, astronomers, and others, who believe that even if the sun doesn't burn the Earth, that is, if the Earth somehow escapes this catastrophe, the Earth would slowly freeze and become a dead planet because there would be no sun to provide warmth and life. And so they say the world may end in ice. Let's see what is there, or what's the explanation. Let's have a paraphrasing of line number 3 and 4. The poet then says that he has known uncontrolled human desire so closely that he agrees with the people who say that the world would be consumed by fire. He has compared fire with human desire because unbridled desire consumes the human soul and burns it like fire. Human beings desire to possess wealth, possess property, or even another human being has the capacity to force one man to kill another. In these lines, Frost has used the word tasted. I have tasted of desire. From what I have tasted of desire. Tasted here means known or understood or observed. He wants to say that whatever I have observed about desire, whatever I have understood about desire, I hold with those. I hold with those means I support those people. I agree with those people who favor fire or who say that the world would end in fire. Because when in the hold of a fervent desire, man loses his capacity for rational thinking. He loses his wisdom. He reverts to his instinct, and sometimes his instincts tell him that nothing is too heinous for the achievement of the purpose. Everything is fair in love and war. Everything is fair for the achievement of your purpose. And sometimes this passionate desire makes a man kill his own brother, his parents, or sometimes his own friends. So this power of desire has the power to kill if it is unchecked. Now let us understand line number 5 to line number 9. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So here the poet says that if the world had to die a second time, or if he were to choose another option or another way in which the world might meet its end, he knows the extents to which hatred can take human beings. And so he chooses ice because he feels just as ice freezes everything, hatred also freezes all human emotions and feelings. Hatred, jealousy, covetousness, and its other allied emotions makes man indifferent to the plight of others. When this happens on a mass scale, the world is sure to meet its doom. Let's take the example of Hitler, who appeared a few decades after this poem was written. His hatred for the Jewish race made him commit mass murder, and almost 2/3 of the Jewish population was wiped off from the face of this planet. Just imagine if a few more people emerge just like Hitler, with the ideas and opinions and the ideology of Hitler, what would happen to the planet? Let's study the theme of the poem. What's the theme of this poem? The central theme of this poem is that human emotions are destructive when allowed to run amok. Amok means wildly, unchecked, unbridled, uncontrolled. They can destroy a person morally, they can destroy him mentally and physically. Frost uses the symbol of fire and ice to show how desires and hatred contribute to making the world stand at the verge of chaos. Also, these powerful emotions, if unchecked, will eventually drag the world towards a catastrophic end. Now let's study the rhyme scheme of the poem. Now we are moving towards the analysis of the poem. So, the rhyme scheme. Let's see which words rhyme with the last word of the first line, fire. Fire, desire, fire. First line, third line and fourth line, they rhyme. Let's assign them the letter A. Now, let's move to the second line and see which words rhyme with ice. Ice, twice, ice and suffice. Second line, fifth line, seventh line and the last ninth line. Let's assign them the letter B. Now whatever is left, let us see. Hate and great, they rhyme, and hence let us assign them the letter C. So the rhyme scheme of the poem is ABA, ABC, BCB. Now let's see the figures of speech which are there in the poem. The first one being alliteration. What is alliteration? It's the occurrence of the same sound, not the same letters. There are some students who confuse between the same sound and the same letters. So not the same letters, but focus on the sound. The occurrence of the same sound at the beginning, middle, or end of successive or alternative words. Let's study alliteration in this poem. Some say first and second line, the repetition of the sound S tells us that here we have an example of alliteration. Here we have a case of alliteration, the repetition of S sound. Next we have world, will, the repetition of the sound W. Then we have hold with those. O sound has been repeated here. Next we have favor, fire. The F sound, F sound has been repeated. And then we have if it, the sound of E has been repeated. So that's all for alliteration in this poem. Next we have enjambment. Enjambment is the continuation of a sentence without a punctuation beyond the end of a line, couplet or stanza. So when one line or when one sentence seeps into another line without a punctuation, remember, without a punctuation. If there is a punctuation, it's not enjambment. If there is no punctuation and the sentence continues to the next line, this arrangement is called enjambment. Let's see in this poem. Some say the world will end in fire. Here the sentence did not end. There is no punctuation. It continued to the next line, to the second line, and hence it's an example of enjambment. The third line is also an example of enjambment because from what I have tasted of desire is not the end of the sentence. It continues to the next line. And there is no punctuation after desire. Then, I think I know enough of hate. It's not the end of the sentence, hence it's an example of enjambment. It's the same with the 7th line and the 8th line. They do not end there. The sentences do not end there. There is no punctuation, and the sentence continues to the next line. Here we have a sentence, this line number 5, but if it had to perish twice. But if it had to perish twice, twice is not the end of a sentence. The sentence continues to the next line. But after twice, we have a punctuation. And this punctuation mark does not allow enjambment to fit. This is not enjambment because we have a punctuation mark after the word twice. And next figure of speech, next rhetoric device that we are going to study here is anaphora. Anaphora is the repetition of a word or a phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or lines. In this poem, some say is an example of anaphora because both the consecutive lines, they start with the same phrase, some say. Hence, it's an example of anaphora. Next, we'll talk about metaphor. Implicit or indirect comparison of two dissimilar objects is called metaphor. I'm sure you have studied metaphor several times before this. It's quite opposite to simile, not opposite, but it's a little different from simile because in simile also we compare two dissimilar objects, but we use the words like or as. But in metaphor, we compare those two dissimilar objects, but we do not use the words like or as. So the comparison is indirect or it's implicit, not clear, not exactly, not directly stated. In this poem, fire has been compared to desire and ice has been compared to hatred. And hence, these are metaphors. Fire is a metaphor for desire and ice is a metaphor for hatred. Next, we have antithesis. What's antithesis? The word antithesis, it's a combination of two different words, anti and thesis. Anti means opposite, thesis means theory. So it literally means opposite the theory. So it's a rhetorical device in which two opposite ideas are put together in a sentence to achieve a contrasting or opposite effect. Two different opposite ideas are put together. Now, how does this poem contain antithesis? Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. This is a sentence where two different ideas, two opposite ideas have been put together. It's a sentence. So in the first part, people say the world will end in fire, and in the second part, they say the world will end in ice. Fire and ice are two contrasting ideas, and hence this is an antithesis. Next, we have irony. Irony is a form of rhetoric device where the opposite of what is expected happens. In the poem, fire and ice are two opposite forces. It is expected that both can never work together or be together. Yet, they both can have equal perilous effect on human beings, dangerous effect on human beings or on the entire world. Also, in the 7th and 8th line, you must have seen that the poet says that for destruction, ice is also great. This expression is extremely ironical because something that's destructive can never be great. How can it be great? Now let's talk about the symbolism in the poem. Fire is a very powerful symbol that Frost has used to talk about the power of human desires. Fire consumes everything in its path. It's a symbol of destruction. Similarly, strong and unchecked desire can make a man take extreme measures and head towards not only self-destruction, but the destruction of all around him. The next very powerful symbol used in this poem is that of ice. Ice is symbolic of freezing of growth, stopping of growth, non-existence of life and negativity. Frost uses the symbol of ice to compare it to hatred. Just as ice freezes everything and doesn't allow anything to grow, hatred in human heart freezes all emotions. There are so many more things about this poem to be discussed, but we will do it in another video. Meanwhile, if you have any questions related to the poem, please ask in the comment box below. If you feel this video has been useful, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching the video. Please take care and be safe.